Well, good evening. My name is Jonathan Manning. I am the president of Purdue Students for Life here, and on behalf of Students for Life, I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming. I'd also like to welcome our online viewers. We are live streaming this event at createdequalfilms.com as well as the Students for Life website, and so we're joined by viewers across the country and even around the world, so welcome to you as well. If you are following the debate online and wish to comment via social media, we're using the hashtag abortiondebate, very imaginative. In addition, if you are watching online, you'll be able to participate in the Q&A at the end via Twitter. So tweet your questions to us. Our handle is Purdue SFL. And again, use the hashtag abortiondebate so we can find your questions and be sure to get those read after the audience here has asked their questions. It's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. Tonight's debate is a formal resolution debate. The resolution is elective abortion is a human rights injustice. Taking the affirmative position on that resolution is Mr. Seth Drayer. Seth Drayer is the Director of Training for Created Equal, an organization based in Columbus, Ohio. They are dedicated to defending preborn humans, and Seth equips the next generation of preborn defenders by arming them with the scientific and philosophical case for the humanity of the preborn, providing conversational skills, and inspiring them to create dialogue at their schools and in their communities. Seth has provided training to national organizations such as Students for Life of America, Survivors of the Abortion Holocaust, and Teachers Saving Children. Seth also serves as faculty at the Friends for Life Annual Apologetics Retreat alongside Scott Klusendorf of the Life Training Institute. Seth holds a Bachelor of Arts in French teaching and is originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So let's welcome Seth. Our next speaker, taking the negative position, is Professor Ralph Webb. Professor Webb has been an instructor at Purdue for the past 44 years. He was included in the inaugural edition of the Book of Great Teachers at Purdue and is a fellow in the Purdue University Teaching Academy. He has taught abroad in London, Oxford, Italy, Australia, and on the Purdue European Grand Tour through Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and France. His courses, many of which he has designed himself, focus on interpersonal, cultural, and gender-related communication. In 2009, Professor Webb was one of 4 professors at Purdue University to receive the Charles B. Murphy Award for Outstanding Undergraduate Teaching. Professor Webb has had extensive experience in formal debate, both as a competitor and as a coach. So we welcome Professor Webb. Our moderator for this evening is Mr. Alan Bunning. Mr. Bunning has had experience in debate in high school and is also a debate coach. He's also an associate professor at Ivy Tech University here. So Mr. Bunning will now come and explain the format of tonight's debate as well as some rules for the audience. So, Mr. Bunning.
Good evening. So we're going to have a debate tonight, and he told you the resolution was elective abortion is a human rights injustice. And so this is a formal debate. There's many types of debates, so we're going to follow some simple rules. And you can see in your program the format, so we're going to have opening statements by both for 20 minutes. They will also be cross-examined by both for 3 minutes each. Now during the cross-examination, that is the questioner's time, so he is free to interrupt the speaker, move on to a new topic, cut him off as he sees fit, because he wants to maximize his questioning time. After the opening statements and the cross-examinations, you will notice that the negative gives the first rebuttal. That is traditional for a formal debate, where the affirmative gets the first and the last word. You may not like that, but that's actually how courts of law are set up. So the negative rebuttal will go first. That will be followed by the affirmative rebuttal by Mr. Drayer. That will be each 10 minutes. And then they'll each give their closing statements, 5 minutes each, with negative going first, followed by affirmative. We ask that you keep all your applause, any kind of outbursts or anything like that, till the end of the speech. We don't want any disruptions that are taking away from their time or disrupting their flow of speaking. After that, you will have a chance to participate. We will have a question and answer period, and when we get to that, we'll kind of explain that format, and we'll go from there. So, with that, I think we'll go ahead and begin with Mr. Drayer's 20-minute opening statement.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Jonathan and Purdue Students for Life for inviting me, and Dr. Webb for joining me in tonight's debate. And I want to be upfront. I'm afraid there's one thing if I admit right now, I'm going to lose the debate. But I want to be brave and do it anyway. My degree is from Indiana University. Cast your tomatoes now. Growing up in a solidly Hoosier home, Boilermaker may not have been a four-letter word, but only because as a kid I had no idea what a boiler was, wouldn't have cared who made it anyway, let alone who Purdue Pete was. But tonight I'm going to admit, you have a mascot. We're still trying to figure out what a Hoosier is anyway. No one really knows. So hopefully tonight we can set aside our prejudices and come together for a robust exchange of ideas. I can only go uphill from there, right? Tonight's topic is elective abortion. We've been asked to consider whether or not this is a human rights injustice. And on this issue in this room, we're not all in agreement. So before we dive in, I'd like to see if we can find some common ground. Please consider the question on the screen. Is it just or unjust for parents to directly and intentionally kill their innocent, born children? What do you think? Sadly, this is not a mere hypothetical. Here's just one example. On April 12, 2011, a 10-year-old boy was found shivering on the banks of the Hudson River in Newburgh, New York, with a shocking story. Earlier that night, his mother, LaShonda Armstrong, faced another volatile dispute with longtime boyfriend Jean-Pierre. But this time, it was too much. LaShonda did what she thought was her last solution to save herself and her children from future pain, and that was to take all four of them in her minivan and drive straight into the Hudson River. Only the eldest was able to free himself with a seatbelt, escape from the van, and wade to shore. The other three perished along with their mother. Now, in the wake of this tragedy, we should ask, did LaShonda have a legitimate concern? And I say yes. She was concerned not just for herself, but also for the future pain of her children. Still, we have to ask, was it just or unjust for the three Armstrong children to be killed that night? I say unjust, and I submit to you that on that we probably agree. Whether you came pro-life or pro-choice tonight, we can probably unite in our belief that for parents to directly and intentionally kill their innocent children is an injustice. It strips those children of their basic right to life. We believe it's wrong regardless of the circumstances that drive parents there. We believe it's wrong regardless of how long and hard parents reflect upon this before doing so. Tonight, we only disagree on one thing, the definition of children. So building off of that, my goal is to argue tonight to affirm our resolution that elective abortion is a human rights injustice by suggesting that the preborn children killed every day by abortion are equal in humanity to the Armstrong children killed that night. Here's my case. First, to directly and intentionally kill innocent human beings is a human rights injustice. Second, elective abortion directly and intentionally kills innocent human beings. 3, therefore, abortion is a human rights injustice. Now, I think I've already shown that most, if not all of us tonight, agree with that first claim, and the third follows logically from the premises above. So what I have to defend tonight in my opening remarks is that second claim, that elective abortion directly and intentionally kills innocent human beings. And here's how I'll do that, with 2 questions. First, is the preborn human? And second, does abortion kill her? Now, someone might say, wait, it's more complicated than that. But I point back to the Armstrong tragedy. Are there other questions to ask? Absolutely, such as, did society fail LaShonda? How could we better help parents in similar circumstances to prevent these tragic choices? These are critical questions, but They are irrelevant to the moral question of whether it is right or wrong for children to be killed in that way. And tonight we've gathered to discuss that moral question. So why was it wrong for the 3 Armstrong children to be killed that night in April? Was it because of their age? Well, no, it couldn't be, because they varied in their age. How about their size? They varied in that too. If it was wrong to kill all 3 of them, they must have had something in common. And they did, one thing. They were each human beings. So our question is the preborn human too? Indeed, this is the definitive question before Dr. Webb and me tonight. For if the preborn is not a human being, then to kill her is morally innocuous, akin to cutting one's hair. But if she is a human, then to kill her is wrong. Now, I'll tell you, last month when the Olympics started back up again, I was excited to see some of our heroes from 4 years ago return, and when Shaun White appeared, I was shocked. Not just because he didn't do so well, but because he looked so different. The infamous long locks of the flying tomato were cut away. When he cut his hair, Shaun White, were people disappointed? Maybe, but that was not a human rights injustice. No innocent humans were killed when he cut his hair. No humans were denied their natural rights. So our question is the preborn human too? And how do we answer that? We have to go to the right area. We don't look at religion or philosophy. Those can inform how we value something, but we're first asking, what is the something? Is the preborn fetus, embryo, a human or not? And so for that, we go to the science of embryology. And here's what we learned from the science of embryology. From the earliest stages of her development, the preborn is a distinct, living, whole human being. Fertilization is a non-arbitrary line of demarcation in which something new is created. Prior to sperm-egg fusion, we have 2 parts of 2 greater wholes. The sperm is part of the father, the ovum is part of the mother. When those cells unite at sperm-egg fusion, those cells essentially die, giving up their genetic material to create something new, the living one-celled zygote. And someone might ask, well, what kind of a zygote is it? And that really is a fair question, because there are feline zygotes and canine zygotes too. Zygote is really just a label for a stage of development. But we know that we have a living human zygote because living things reproduce after their own kind. When cats sexually reproduce, they create other cats, and dogs make other dogs. Humans, we always create other human beings when we sexually reproduce. So that one-celled embryo is very young, but her immaturity has no bearing on the kind of thing that she is, a member of the same species as her parents, Homo sapiens. And if you pick up an embryology textbook on this fine campus, or maybe drive down to Bloomington, where there's a great medical school, and pick up an embryology textbook, you will see this borne out as fact. For example, in the developing human, clinically oriented embryology, Drs. T.V.N. Prasad and Keith Moore write this: a zygote created at fertilization is the beginning of a new human being. Human development begins at fertilization. In 1981, less than 10 years after Roe versus Wade, a U.S. Senate subcommittee report to the Senate Judiciary Committee cited a host of authorities echoing again this fact, such as Dr. Michelin Matthews-Roth of Harvard Medical School, in which she testified, "It is incorrect to say that biological data cannot be decisive. It is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception." The evidence is so clear that many sitting in Dr. Webb's seat tonight, those on the other side of the debate, actually concede the point. Peter Singer, the great champion of the pro-choice side from Princeton University, in his book Practical Ethics, writes this: "It is possible to give human being a precise meaning. We can use it as the equivalent to member of the species Homo sapiens. In this sense, there is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is a human being." So is the preborn human? There is no doubt. The scientific inquiry leads us to declare, yes, she's a living human being, and from her beginning at fertilization, there is then no essential change to who she is. Her identity remains the same. She just grows older and looks different in each phase of development. So the second question, does abortion kill her? On the screen is a diagram from Nucleus Medical Art, not an anti-abortion organization, but a medical imaging company, of a suction and curettage abortion, the most common procedure in the first trimester. In this, once the cervix is forced open, a hollow tube is inserted, a cannula, and suction is applied. Now, what happens when you try to suck something soft through a tiny tube? It's ripped apart. But in this case, we're dealing with a living human being, as we just cleared with our scientific evidence. And as she's ripped apart, she dies. This is a 23-week fetus being aborted through a dilation and evacuation abortion. Shown here at 23 weeks, but Planned Parenthood admits on their website this procedure is used much earlier in the second trimester. And this procedure, once the cervix is again forced open, a forceps is inserted, and you clamp down the body part and sever it from the body, then repeating the process. The Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada recommend a crushing rotating technique so that bone spicules from the baby do not lacerate the mother. So you clamp down, crush, rotate, clamp, crush, rotate, until the baby's entirely removed, and as she's dismembered, again, she dies. In yet later methods, the baby's injected with a drug like digoxin to induce a heart attack, and then she's born dead. But please don't take my word for it. I'm going to offer you a chance to see proof for yourselves. Abortion supporter and feminist Naomi Wolf, in the 1995 New Republic article, Our Bodies, Our Souls, writes this regarding abortion images. The pro-choice movement often treats with contempt the pro-lifers' practice of holding up to our faces their disturbing graphics. But how can we charge that it is vile and repulsive for pro-lifers to brandish vile and repulsive images if the images are real? To insist that truth is in poor taste is the very height of hypocrisy. I'm going to show you now the truth of what abortion does to the young humans we just discussed. But as I show you this harrowing reality, I want to make a side note here. I'm not building my case against abortion tonight theologically, because many of you may fundamentally disagree. And if we're going to reach a solution to this question, is abortion an injustice, we need to begin with some common ground. But I want to make a note here that as I show you the bad news of what abortion does daily to our future, I want to share that there's good news of healing. I am a Christian, and I do believe that forgiveness can be found at the cross through the work of Jesus Christ. Not that God merely overlooks our sins, but that the work of His Son can pay for our sins if we place faith in Him. And so tonight I'm not beating up on anyone who's had an abortion, because I sin against the same infinite God and require the same forgiveness. And so I just want you to know that there is good news of healing, and if anyone would like to hear more about that, I'd love to chat with you later. Now let's play the video. $275. That is the number of times that will happen during the 2 hours we're sitting comfortably in this room tonight. In total, 3,300 humans will die just like that today in America alone, according to the Guttmacher Institute. Abortion is killing our future. Now, I wish I could rest my case there, but there are some who accept my science. They say, you're right, that is a living human being in the womb. They go on to admit that what you saw is a decapitation, dismembering, and disemboweling of a human. But then they say, it's not the same as killing you or me. The fetus, they say, doesn't count as one of us. Why? Because she's different. She may be human biologically, they say, but she's not a person like we born humans. Now, I can see tonight that preborn embryos and fetuses differ from born humans. But I ask, do our differences really matter when it comes to our personhood? Should we really exclude from society some humans because of something over which they have no control? Or are we all created equal? For example, some people say, you're right, that's a human being, but then they say that one-celled embryo you see there, she's so small, she can't be a person like we adult human beings, we born humans. But I say it's true, zygotes, embryos, fetuses are smaller than adult humans, but who else is smaller than us? Newborns. Does her smaller size make the newborn less of a person? No, size is irrelevant. Others say, well, that embryo can't think or reason. She's not self-aware. That is, she's at a lower level of development. And again, I concede the point. But newborns can't think or reason like teenagers. Newborns, as Peter Singer admits, again from Princeton, they're not born self-aware. Does this nullify their natural rights? No, again, it's irrelevant. Others say, but she's in a strange environment. She's inside the womb, and that makes her not a person. Really? Are there any newborns in the auditorium tonight? I don't think so. They're probably all home with their parents. Does the fact that they're inside their parents' house make them less of a person than those outside their parents' house? No, where you are does not determine who you are. And lastly, some say, but she depends upon her mother. And, again, I concede the point. But who does a newborn depend upon? Her mother. Is her dependency upon her mother grounds for execution for the newborn? No. So why do we use the same excuse to kill the same child when she's just younger in utero? Indeed, to kill a child at 6 months gestation for a reason we'd never kill a child at 6 months after birth is to discriminate based upon age. Not for privileges like driving or voting, but for the natural right to life. But if we know it's wrong to discriminate based upon sex or color, how can it be okay to discriminate based upon age? This is unfair. But there's even more personal terror for all of us tonight. And that's because even all of us, we born humans, we differ in size. In this room, we have individuals at various levels of development, physically, intellectually. We come from very different environments. We are all maybe ranging in our level of dependency upon our parents, or some of us upon medications. Does that mean we all vary in our personhood too, based upon these criteria? Or is there a better way? I offered alternative, an inclusive society in which every human being counts. I argue you are valuable because of who you are, not because of what you can do. How you look and act, that is going to change as you grow older, but who you are, your identity, your membership in the human family, that will not change. And you've had that since you began to exist at fertilization. So let's review. Tonight's basic case: to defend our resolution that elective abortion is a human rights injustice, I argued first, to directly and intentionally kill innocent human beings is a human rights injustice. Second, abortion directly and intentionally kills innocent human beings. To support this premise, we asked, is the preborn human? Embryology confirmed she is. We also asked, well, does abortion kill her? The visual evidence you saw confirms that it does. And we looked at the differences between preborn humans and born humans, and those differences are irrelevant because the same differences exist among all of us. Therefore, we must conclude abortion is a human rights injustice. Now, Dr. Webb can easily defeat our resolution tonight, can defeat my entire case by doing one thing: defeating my evidence that the preborn are human beings. Remember, if they are humans, if they are not humans, abortion is morally innocuous, permissible. But if they are humans, then to kill them is tantamount to killing a born child, and that is an injustice. So as you listen tonight, ask yourselves, well, which side has better evidence to answer the question, what is the preborn? And then you will know whether or not our resolution stands. But first, I'd like to go back to the story I began with, the tragedy of the Armstrong family. Just before LaShonda made her tragic move, she posted on Facebook. She wrote, "I'm so sorry, everyone. Please forgive me for what I'm going to do. This is it." This was a mother in pain. And it would be a gross misrepresentation of the tragedy to say that she reveled in killing her children. And likewise, I've spent enough hours outside abortion clinics. I've talked to enough women who've had abortions to know they don't revel in abortions. Women don't go skipping joyfully or cavalierly into abortion clinics. This isn't the best day of their lives. But if you could go back in time, read on Facebook, and talk to LaShonda, what would you say? Would you give her your blessing as she made that fateful drive? Or would you help her escape from the volatile relationship and find solutions to the actual problems? Likewise, what should we do when we encounter women considering abortion? Should we encourage them to eliminate their preborn child? Or should we do the hard work of digging into their lives, facing the real circumstances head on, and finding real solutions that don't include eliminating their children? Indeed, sometimes circumstances motivating women to choose abortion are dire, like poverty, abusive relationships, even rape. But as Stephanie Gray of the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform has asked, in these circumstances, Does abortion actually get to the root of the problem? Does what you saw on the screen moments ago unrape a rape victim? Does what you saw give sudden wealth to a woman in poverty? Does what you saw take an abusive man some might call the proverbial frog and magically transform him into a gallant prince? No, it does not. Abortion doesn't even get to many of the root problems women today face, but it does give them a child in the trash can. As a civilized society, we must do better. So is abortion a human rights injustice? That's the topic tonight, and that will rise and fall upon whether or not the preborn are humans. That's what Dr. Webb and I are debating and what you've gathered to judge for yourselves. But soon, we'll all go home and we may one day meet someone pregnant considering abortion. Will you want to truly help her? If so, then let's seek to alleviate her difficult circumstances without eliminating her preborn child. For indeed, abortion is a human rights injustice, not merely because there's something unique about the fetus. Abortion is unjust because it is a breach of the universal human equality that is essential to a just society. Mother and child both have dignity, and we must defend the natural rights of each. Why? Because both are humans, and all humans are created equal. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to have the cross-examination. I just remind you that it's perfectly permissible for the questioner to cut off the speaker, change topics, and he will do so at his discretion because this is history minutes.
I have to move over here.
That's fine. Yes.
First, I am Ralph Webb, if you didn't catch that in the introduction. And my job here is to clarify an alternative position to the one that Seth just advanced. But before I set forth my argument, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
One is, what is a natural human right?
A natural human right would be one that is grounded in who we are, our human nature, the fact that we are humans, as opposed to a positive right. The government does grant positive rights like driving or voting, things that originate with them, but there are natural rights that we have by definition of being human, such as the natural right to life, the right not to be prosecuted without a fair trial, the right, other rights such as other rights like that. These rights we have whether or not government recognizes them. No one ought to kill me without justification. That's a natural right. So the government may or may not recognize them, but I have them by definition of being human.
And from whence come these rights?
These rights come from the fact that we are humans. Many have appealed before to self-evident natural law. Others appeal to specific theology. But I think we all agree that there are natural rights we hold. Even if the government determined that men have no right to life, we would say, well, that's wrong because we know that men and women are equal and both have a right to life. That means it must go beyond government. Whether it's natural law or specific theology, that's a natural right that is held by all human beings.
By all human beings?
Correct.
You mean human beings in all stations of life, on all continents?
Yes, sir.
In all nations?
I do.
Of all ages?
Yes, this is a question.
Do you have any proof that human rights, natural human rights, exist?
I don't want to respond with a question because I'm not supposed to. I'll save that for later. But my response would be, again, we have various ways of defending natural rights. Some would appeal to specific theology.
I'm asking about defense of them. I'm asking about the existence of them. And what proof do you have, or do we have, that natural rights exist?
Well, the question you're asking me is not a new one. This question was laid on the table in the famous debates between Lincoln and Douglas in 1858 to 59, which they were asking, is it true that all humans have a natural right? Douglas wanted not merely proof. Douglas was advancing an agenda that natural rights only belong to a certain class of humans. I'm advancing an agenda that belongs to all human beings, and so both Lincoln and Douglas, when they faced this question, they agreed there was a natural right to life. The question was, does it apply equally to everyone? I would say we know intuitively that we have natural rights. Ask yourself, if the government comes to your house and hauls you away and executes you without a fair trial, did they do something wrong? Only if there are natural rights did they. If government creates our rights, they can determine that that's fine to do that. If there's a natural right that cannot be abridged that you have by definition of being human, then they did something wrong, otherwise they did not. So it's up to you to determine whether or not we have natural rights. I argue we do.
We'll now hear from Professor Webb with his 20 minutes opening statement.
I, too, am pleased to be here to present an alternative position on the issue. But I'll tell you, I am not a debater. I was introduced as a debater. I'm an educator. And I'm not paid by an organization other than Purdue University to be an educator, to facilitate education. When Jonathan came to me a few weeks back and asked if I would participate in this debate, my first response to him was, I really don't want to do that. There are other people on this campus, in this community, in this state, certainly nation, who can advance alternative positions to the one that Seth just advanced, and do it more powerfully and probatively than I can. So go find one. He came back a few weeks later and said he was unable to do so. And I wasn't sure why. I didn't really do any systematic inquiry into this, but when I told some of my friends and family that I was going to participate in this, I got some interesting reactions. One was, what, two white men once again debating human rights, women's rights, abortion as an evil? That was one response. The other is, why would you want to put yourself in the position of being chastised by individuals who have already made up their minds? Maybe that characterizes us all. Is there anyone in this audience who is undecided on this issue? Or are you here representing a point of view long held? Seth didn't say anything in his presentation that is new to me, and I presume new to any of you. You've heard that. You've seen those pictures. And I dare say there isn't much that I'm going to say that's new and different. But I'm here because, as I said, I'm an educator, and I think there's some advantage to be gained in articulating some of the issues that surround the abortion debate. A couple other things I want to say as we continue on here. The advertisement for tonight says, "Is abortion a human rights injustice?" That's the proposition on the floor. That's a proposition of fact. If there are any comm majors in the audience, you know what I'm talking about. That's not a proposition of opinion. And it's not a proposition of Value. Propositions of value include words like beautiful, be it resolved that Marilyn Monroe is the most beautiful woman who ever lived. That's a proposition of value. This isn't that. And it certainly is not a proposition of policy. Most debates on university campuses are that. And if you advance a proposition of policy, then it behooves you to establish a need to change the status quo and to discuss the desirability of doing so and to advance a plan and articulate the particulars of it and to prove that it can, or argue that it can be implemented. Maybe if we could ascertain the facts of this matter, it would lead to some value judgments and to some policy changes. Now, I tell you that this is a proposition of fact, and Seth admits to that, agreed to that. But there's one other thing you have to know about debate, and that's that the affirmative position, the one that Seth has advanced, shoulders the burden of proof. If you have any notion of what presumption is in the law courts or in our society, then you know that the presumption rests with me. Presumption rests with the status quo. Presumption rests with the innocent, if you will. And it is up to the opposing position to change that, overcome the presumption. He runs the risk of non-persuasion. I don't have to say anything except that he couldn't even answer my question about what's a human right, other than it's intuitive. You feel it. You sense it. Well, would it surprise you to know that there are some people, philosophers for certain, and some ethicists and some medical personnel as well, who don't believe that there are such things as human rights, at least not rights that are universally accepted. If I ask you here and now to write down a list of the universally held human rights, our list would be so short as to be 2 minutes in its articulation. We don't agree. We don't agree that there are such things. People in other nations, other cultures, other times do not accept the claim that there are fundamental human rights. And that notwithstanding our own Constitution that says we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. I presume that means human rights. Notwithstanding that, because not all people on this earth believe such exists. That seems to me to be important. I do agree with one thing that Seth said, and that is that taking the life of a human being is abhorrent. It's probably immoral. We should never do that. So we better ascertain what a human being is. And he put his finger on that. He said it's at the point of conception that something that wasn't a human becomes a human. Well, that, I suspect, is one way of looking at it. But, Seth, do you know that there isn't such a thing as a point of conception within medical terminology and developments in our scientific community? doesn't exist. While it's common to refer to the moment of conception, that is importantly misleading. Fertilization is itself a gradual process that typically takes about 22 hours from beginning to end. As such, it is no more instantaneous than other potentially important points in fetal development, such as the point at which the fetus first becomes viable. 22 to 24 hours for a sperm and an egg to unite into what I guess we'll have to call a zygote. But even after that happens, then what? Is the zygote a human being? That's what the issue is all about. You know, there are places throughout this world that will argue with Seth and with me as well that you do not become a human being when the egg and the sperm have united. Like what am I talking about? You know, in the laws of Great Britain, for instance, a zygote is not considered a human being until 14 days. Well, why 14 days? Because at that point in the developmental process, something happens. And doctors are cited and scientists are cited to establish that during those 14 days, that egg, sperm, doesn't even know whether it's a twin or not. So at 14 days is the point at which the development of the cells permits that kind of diffusion. And so then we have two people as opposed to one, what happened in the process. But then, of course, there are others beyond the 14 days, the point of viability, where the developing fetus can attach itself to the womb and then eventually live on its own, but of course it can't live on its own. There are points along the developmental continuum that reputable science, philosophers, religion experts have tried to identify unequivocally the origin of the human being, the origin of personhood. When does that set in? Shall we define that in terms of consciousness? When does a developing zygote establish consciousness? And we don't know that, nor do they know it down at IU. We don't know when consciousness begins. Some would argue that maybe we should focus on feelings of the zygote. We don't know when feeling states begin. Yeah, you can show pictures of developing in the developmental process where there appears to be pain on the face of an embryo. But when does feelings begin? Consciousness begins. When do attitudes set in? There was an interesting conference a few months back where some scientists sat down, including a religious expert, to create life. To create life. That sounds like something we would do at Purdue. We are makers of things. Well, let's make life. And they could not agree about life, what it is and when it begins, and for that matter, when it ends. They turn their attention ultimately to that question. Well, if we are not absolutely sure when it starts, maybe we can be certain of when it ends. Well, what does that mean? I'm from Denver. Out west, you ride your horse up and there'd be a dead cowboy, and you lean over and you put your ear on his chest, and if he wasn't breathing, you say, yeah, he's dead. That wouldn't hold up so well anymore. So now we argue about, well, has the heart stopped beating? Well, does the beating of the heart have anything to do with life and death? You can keep a body alive artificially for a good long while, up to years, without the heart beating. How about brain dead? What part of the brain? All of it? Or some of it? We don't know when life begins nor ends. You keeping track of my time? Okay. We don't know it. We can claim the existence of life, but as to exactly when it starts, I don't know. There was one other thing that Seth said that I'm now taking issue absolutely unequivocally with the claim that life begins at conception, even if we know when it is. Life might begin, but human life is one of those abstract concepts that has to be argued about and defined. And that's what I've been talking about for the last few minutes. What is human life? We talk about the sanctity of life, and everybody agrees about that. Well, yeah, except we don't agree with it. Sanctity of life. There are people in here who won't eat meat because they honor the sanctity of life. Well, that's fine, but you know, even to kill a plant is killing. We're not talking about killing things. We couldn't exist on this earth without killing things. It can't be done. We kill grass to feed cows. We kill bacteria. We kill sperm. We kill spiders when they bite us on the back of the neck. People, you and I, kill things. So it's not the sanctity of life. It, again, is the sanctity of human life. And when does human life begin? You can say, with some arbitrariness, conception. But I've told you that there are other arguments for establishing that point at different times, different points along the developmental process. And I strongly hold to the notion that there isn't such a thing as fundamental human rights that are intuited. Human rights are things that we ascertain for our benefit, usually for the benefit of the power structure, white men, if you will. We make certain claims. I want to say one other thing before my time's up as an issue to be argued here, and that is why do we insist on thinking of things like life as binary, that you either are alive or you are not alive? There's some reason to think in terms of degrees of life, degrees of death. Heavens, my wife came home from a meeting the other day and she said one of the women is very concerned that one of her loved ones is dying. And I didn't say it to her because she needed comfort and needed to talk, but But what went through my mind is we're all dying. And some of us are closer to it than others. Some of us are closer to birth than others. Why do we insist on thinking of life, the definition of life, as binary? To me, that's one of the problems we have in the university. We classify things as though they are binary when in fact they're not. In my gender communication class, I will ask people, what's your gender? And I'll always get answers like, I'm a man or I'm a woman, as though those were the only two. In fact, they're not even genders, they're sexes. How many genders are there? There are as many genders as there are people in this room. We all stretch along a continuum from masculinity to femininity, and that relative to particular characteristics. We cannot continue to think about complex matters like this one in terms of binariness. Then I, of course, have to say here, for the benefit of the pro-choice people, that you do not have to be for abortion if you are pro-choice, and that's my position. I am pro-choice, not pro-abortion.
Dr. Webb, do you believe it is wrong to directly and intentionally kill innocent human beings?
I think it is wrong. You said I agreed with you on that, and I do agree with that.
Why is it wrong?
Because the human being is now fully functioning, has a conscience.
Does the human have a right not to be killed?
A human?
If it's wrong to kill innocent human beings, do they have a right not to be killed?
I agree with that too. You have a right not to be killed if you are a human.
So is that a natural right that humans hold?
What?
That they have a right not to be killed without justification?
Human beings.
Okay, so transitioning, do you believe sexism is wrong?
Yes.
Why?
Because it positions one of the prevailing sexes, the way we talk about sex. Anyway, it positions one of them in a superior position over the other.
Okay. All right. What is the difference between born and preborn that justifies killing one but not the other?
Because one's a human and the other isn't.
Okay.
And we're not talking about preborn of all types, shapes, and sizes. Preborn goes from those 22 hours of the embryo development to the day before the developed embryo comes out of the womb.
Okay.
One is closer to being a human being than the other.
Transitioning again, do you think all human beings are persons?
All human beings are persons, yes.
Where do you, how would you define a person?
In the way I've been talking about it here, a person is some living organism with a sense of consciousness, a sense of personness.
Okay.
Not established at the point of conception, established somewhere along the line.
Okay, transitioning again, would you agree that some things are true for all peoples, all times, like sex trafficking is wrong? Is that true for all peoples, all times, or only some cultures?
Some cultures.
So some things like sex trafficking could be moral in certain cultures.
That is exactly right.
Is sexism moral in some cultures?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so is there anything in your view that is objectively true when it comes to morals?
I think there are various arenas of thought relative to morality, not just justice. That's one issue of morality that needs to be debated and resolved. But there are other domains of concern.
Professor Webb will now get his 10-minute rebuttal.
This is going to be a disjointed rebuttal because the issues that we're dealing with are disjointed. Philosophers have sometimes doubted whether such talk, the existence of natural rights, even makes sense any more than talk of natural systems of traffic regulation or natural political systems makes sense. They find talk of rights in this sense too abstract and too uncontrolled to be of genuine use in moral and political discussions. Criticizing the Declaration of Rights issued during the French Revolution, the legal theorist and philosopher Jeremy Bentham famously said that natural rights is simply nonsense. Natural and imprescribable rights, rhetorical nonsense, nonsense upon stilts. The revolutionaries had claimed to expound the natural, sacred, and inalienable rights of man, and the horrible course of the revolution itself was still fresh in their minds. And you heard what one philosopher says. He's not the only one. We were in my class in cross-cultural communication. I would insist that you read an article that is The Quest for Human Rights. And the essence of that article in one of our better-known reputable academic journals is that there isn't such a thing, that natural rights depend on the culture out of which the person comes. So the existence of natural rights, highly debatable. But back to the point I was making when my first opening remarks were done, and that is that there are other rights that individuals have besides the right to life, however we define it. We have the right to choose. That's a right. And who's going to choose? Who's going to decide whether a zygote or an embryo that is malformed and certainly in danger of dying at birth or shortly thereafter, or being submitted to a life on earth that is has no quality to it? Who's going to decide? You know, our courts are still struggling with that. Why not let the people who are closest to the situation make the decision? Why not let women, for instance, decide whether they want to have an abortion or not? And you say, well, why the woman? Well, who are you going to let make the decision? A doctor? A priest? Who's going to make the decision? in my response to Jonathan, I said, abortion involves a lot of moral issues, not just one. Who is going to decide whether an abortion is the appropriate course of action? When? We've already been talking about the timeline on which life develops. When? Is there a moral distinction to be made between aborting a fetus at 14 days and one at 6 months? Well, of course, of course. So when is an issue that has to be confronted? How? We saw some vivid pictures of a type of abortion that it has been miraculously defined as partial birth. That's not a medical term, that's a rhetorical term that people who don't like abortion came up with. A partial birth abortion. How it's done? Most abortions are done early, very early, and the number of them is getting fewer. But okay, who is to decide? When is the decision to be made? How is the abortion to be performed? All fraught with, I'll say, moral components that must be grappled with. Abortion is an extremely complex issue. If there were indeed truth on this matter, we wouldn't be here tonight. People have been arguing about abortion and its ramifications for a good long while, and that's because neither side has truth on its side. Both sides have arguments to be made and decisions that individuals have to make, and I've just raised the question of who is to make those decisions. When does life begin? Shall I ask the Supreme Court? 9 people? Is that the logical or even the preferable agency to make such a decision as that? Shall I ask religious leaders, philosophers? Shall I ask people in embryology? And by the way, Seth, there are other books in embryology that do not say, as the authors of this particular one says, that life begins at conception, as though that were a point when indeed it is not. There are embryologists who refuse to attempt to define life, and certainly human life. I don't know what else I can say on the matter, except that I strongly believe that those individuals, and that generally comes down to the woman, has the right to decide whether to continue to let a potential human grow in her body. Certainly in the early days of the embryonic development, the fetus development. So choice then is the alternative. And we talk about fairness. Fairness to who? Fairness to the woman? Fairness to the fetus? What is indeed fair, and by what logic, if you will, should we preference fairness to the fetus over fairness to the woman? Fairness to the woman strikes me as another natural right, and I put that in quotation marks because I don't believe that exists either, but that's another right of another kind, and we're talking about rights here. We're talking about moral issues, which is the more important, the life of the one or the life of the other. And make no mistake about it, if we did not have abortion in the repertoire of acceptable behaviors in our society, they would still take place. And if we somehow or other found ways of discontinuing all abortions, we would certainly not discontinue the agony that some women go through. I guess I will end with this question, and I know Seth doesn't have to answer it, but have you ever stopped to think about why women have abortions? Have you read their accounts? What is it in their lives that has led them, that does lead them to abortion? And on that question, and maybe I'll have a chance to answer it myself, but on that question I'll end. Thank you.
You'll recall tonight's resolution. Elective abortion is a human rights injustice. In defense of this, in my opening remarks, I argued three premises. First, to directly and intentionally kill innocent human beings is a human rights injustice. Second, I argued abortion directly and intentionally kills innocent humans. In defense of this, I asked, is the preborn human? The embryology we saw confirms she is. We also asked, does abortion kill her? And the visual evidence you saw confirms that it does. We therefore conclude abortion is a human rights injustice. Now, I did say that Dr. Webb could easily defeat our resolution tonight by doing one thing, defeating my evidence that the preborn are innocent human beings. He has given some evidence on that, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. However, by and large, Dr. Webb sought to defeat our resolution by beginning with asserting that rights don't exist. So let's go down that trail for just a moment and ask, do human rights exist? Ask yourself, would it be okay, would it be just for the government to come to your house, take you away, and execute you? Is that right or is that wrong? Do you have a natural right not to be prosecuted and executed without a fair trial? Hadley Arcus, Amherst professor, in his book Natural Rights and the Right to Choose, he argues there are various types of rights. There are positive legal rights the government does create, and there are natural rights you have by definition of being human. This is, as Dr. Webb noted, this is claimed as early as in our Declaration of Independence. This self-evident fact, they were appealing to natural theology, that we are made in the image of God. But what do you believe? Do you believe you have a natural right, or do you not? When I was living in France long ago, when I was studying French, I was there during the election of President Nicolas Sarkozy. And when he was being elected, I was not a French citizen. I didn't have a legal right to vote. But could the French government come to my house and execute me for no reason? No. Why? If all rights originate with the government, that would have been fine for them to do, because they could declare that as right and just. But I argue that is not just, because I have a natural right to life even if I'm in a culture which does not give me legal rights to vote. This is the difference. This is why we don't expect toddlers to drive a car. They've not yet gained the natural right to drive, which they will gain through maturity. Dr. Webb even later admitted he believes in rights. When I asked him, is it wrong to kill innocent human beings, he said that is wrong. He also then talked about the right to choose as if it's a real, actual thing that women have. So I think we have common ground here. We agree that rights exist. We agree it's wrong to kill innocent human beings. Really where we disagree is still upon where we have human beings. Dr. Webb, on the note of when human life begins, asserted that we don't really know and casts some doubt upon that. I would like to read you a couple more citations from embryology textbooks. Here is one from Langman's Embryology. And Langman's Embryology, medical embryology reads, development begins with fertilization, the process by which the male gamete, the sperm, and the female gamete, the oocyte, unite to give rise to a zygote. We could also look at if you would like to go to a different arena from medical embryology onto medical textbooks and dictionaries, here's just one that HarperCollins Illustrated Medical Dictionary reads, an embryo is an organism in the earliest stages of development. Not some kind of non-living things. It's an organism in the earliest stages of development in a man from the time of conception to the end of the second month in the uterus. The 1981 Senate subcommittee that I referenced that had testimony from various authorities, such as Dr. Mitchell and Matthews Roth, they reached the conclusion, after all their testimony, that physicians, biologists agree that human life begins at conception. I could give you many citations. We have limited time. I have more here. But what is really interesting is looking at those who don't agree with my position, those who hold that abortion ought to be legal. And they, sitting in Dr. Webb, concede the point again because they know the scientific evidence is so clear. Abortion advocate and former president of Planned Parenthood said regarding that life begins at fertilization, this all seems so simple and evident that it is difficult to picture a time when it wasn't part of the common knowledge. David Boonen, I saw Dr. Webb has a book by David Boonen. He says a human fetus, after all, is simply a human being at a very early stage in her development. On the issue, he says that fertilization is not a moment in time. That is true. Fertilization is a process by which the male sperm and the female oocyte unite. But embryologists agree that life begins no later than syngamy when the intermingling of the chromosomes has taken place during fertilization. Women don't know they're pregnant until after that. But even though embryologists agree it's no later than syngamy, there are those who assert it actually is even earlier. Why? Because scientists look at two things when they're trying to distinguish cell types. Dr. Maureen Condict, the doctor of neurobiology at the University of Utah, she has written a paper called When Does Human Life Begin? It was printed by the Westchester Institute, and she argues that when sperm and egg unite, we can look, scientists again look at composition and behavior, and when the sperm and egg unite, we have to ask, what is the composition and behavior of that new thing, the zygote? A sperm and egg both have 23 chromosomes. When they unite, that zygote has 46, a new composition. The sperm looks for egg to penetrate, that's its behavior, and the egg waits for penetration. But once a zygote has been created, the sperm has penetrated the egg, that zygote locks herself off to allow no further penetration. So Dr. Condict concludes we have a new something at the moment of sperm-egg fusion, even before syngamy, before the chromosomes have intermingled. And that is why she says that new something is a new entity, and again, we know it's human because it's of the same species as its parents. So the scientific evidence, again, is on the side that human life begins there. However, I don't really think that Dr. Webb is opposed to that, because later on, I think we got to the heart of what the issue is. And the heart is that Dr. Webb uses the term human and human life differently. We can equivocate on that, but let's be specific about what we're talking here. Human life, whether or not you're a member of the human species, that's objective. Dr. Webb is talking about this idea of personhood, which is a subjective notion. The idea of whether or not you have rights, legal rights granted to you, whether or not you're a member of the human society, whether or not you are a person. This is not a new debate. In 1876, British common law said women are persons when it comes to pain and penalties, but not persons when it comes to privileges or rights. They asserted that women were not persons. In 1858, the Virginia Supreme Court said the slave is not a person in the eyes of the law. This is not a new debate. Whether or not all humans are by definition persons, Dr. Webb is following that line of thought, saying you are right, maybe human life begins at fertilization, but that's not a human valuable life. It's not a person. And that ought to cause fear for all of us. Because what if tomorrow they determine that people living in West Lafayette are not persons? Would you be upset? I think so, because you know I'm a member of the human family. I'm no less a person than anyone else. So ask yourselves, do you believe all humans are persons by definition, or do only some humans count? Dr. Webb also referred to, he did say that it's possible that in some cultures other things are moral, like sex trafficking. Does that work in your worldview? Ask yourself tonight, which side lines up more correctly with my inner worldview? Do I really believe sex trafficking could be moral in some cultures, for men to prey upon women in that way? What about in our culture now? Is it really fair that we take preborn human embryos, human fetuses, living human beings, and rip them apart by abortion? Is that fair and just? Dr. Webb tried to cloud the issue by saying there's not one moral question involved, but ask yourself again, what if the issue on the table tonight were not abortion, but sex trafficking, human slavery? And what if I said human slavery doesn't involve one moral question, but is an act involving many moral questions? I think you'd find that deplorable. Why? Because you know that when it comes to injustice that harms innocent human beings, any possible complexities are irrelevant to whether it is right or wrong. And any possible benefits, too. There could be great economic benefits to human slavery in America, but we don't permit it because we know it's wrong to harm innocent humans to benefit others. And so I'm sorry, so when I said before there was one way to defeat our resolution, I admit there is another way to defeat it tonight. You may accept that human beings begin at fertilization and still defeat our resolution by doing another thing, and that is to reject my first premise, to reject the idea that to kill innocent human beings is objectively wrong. If you reject that premise, you may defeat our resolution tonight, but I really ask, do we really believe tonight that it is okay to take some innocent human beings and kill them for something they have no control over? Dr. Webb again did appeal to some ideas, though, where he said maybe it's a human, but it's not a valuable human because it doesn't have consciousness. What does that mean? If human personhood comes from consciousness, that means some pretty bad things, not just for the preborn, but for the born, too. As Peter Singer, the champion of the pro-choice side, admits, humans are not born with consciousness. They have no conscious desire to go on living. If that grounds our right to life, or if that grounds our personhood, if we deny personhood and rights to the preborn because she's not conscious, the same must be concluded about the newborn. Are you ready tonight to accept infanticide? Are you ready to be consistent and follow where these ideas lead to? Because if not all humans are created equal, if our value is based upon some quality like our consciousness, some humans like newborns don't count. Or what about when you go to sleep tonight and lose consciousness? Are you still a person? But there's even more problems, because if a quality like consciousness grounds our right to life, we all vary in that level of consciousness right now. Some of us may be daydreaming. We're not very conscious. That means we all vary in our level of personhood. The only way to truly achieve equality is to say all humans, by definition, are persons. That includes the born and the preborn.
Okay, now we'll begin our 5-minute closing statements. Professor Webb.
I asked a question as I ran out of time, and I said perhaps Seth would want to answer it, and he didn't, but that's okay. It wasn't addressed to him anyway. It's addressed to you. Why do women want abortions or choose to have abortions? Not because it's a form of birth control. That's not the reason why women have abortions. But there are lots of reasons, probably as many reasons for having abortions as there are women who have them. When Roe versus Wade was being debated, a group of African American women leaders articulated their concerns. And here is their answer. Hunger, homelessness, inadequate housing, inadequate income to provide for themselves and their children, family instability, rape, incest, abuse, too young, you have any idea, this is a parenthetical expression, how old the youngest person was given birth? Think about that for a minute. How young was the... Too old, too sick, too tired, too emotional, too physical, too mental, too social or economic deprived. The reasons for not carrying a pregnancy to term are endless and varied. Did you come up with an answer to my question? I'll tell you. 6 years old. There are instances on record of women, if you want to call a 6-year-old a woman, who have given birth. I think this begins to raise the question, are there any circumstances under which Seth and that side of the issue would permit abortion? Or is abortion going to be defined as an absolute? It's a yes or a no. It's an on or an off. Can't we begin to think in terms of situations, situational ethics, if you will, situational morality, where it is more acceptable than not? The other thing I want to say here in closing is the idea I was making before, and that is we do have rights, but Seth, our rights, and I made this point, are what an anthropologist would call ethnocentric in nature. We have a tendency of believing that the way we think about things is the right way of thinking about them, and everybody else is somehow or other wrong. They're deficient Americans, for instance. Not so. You have to interpret rights, the morality of those rights, with some concern about the culture out of which those rights come and are expressed. They are not universal. I challenged you before. I challenge you again here in ending. Try to come up with a list of universal human rights that everyone in this room and on this earth can agree to. And you're not going to be able to do it. Because every time somebody attempts that, there will be another person or nation or position that argues against it. That's a decision that your culture, your kind makes, and now you're trying to foist it upon us all. I want the right to choose to remain as significant, as important in our world as the right to life, but not to the right of human life. I've tried to make the distinction between life and human life, and all I ask is that we permit those who are closest to the matter, generally speaking, the mother, to make that decision. Thank you.
Do you think all humans are created equal, or do only some of us count? As we close the debate, this is one of the lingering questions in our minds, so let's see if we can draw together the threads of conversation to come to some conclusions. Tonight, you'll recall our resolution is elective abortion is a human rights injustice. In defense of this, I first argued it is unjust to directly and intentionally kill innocent human beings, a human rights injustice. Second, elective abortion directly and intentionally kills innocent humans. We asked, is the preborn human embryology confirmed she is? We asked, does abortion kill her? The visual evidence you saw confirms that it does. We looked at the differences between preborn and born, size, level of development, environment, dependency. We know those must be irrelevant to personhood because those same differences exist among all of us tonight in this room. Yet I think we are all equally persons. What do you think? If so, we conclude, therefore, abortion is a human rights injustice. Now, as we close, I think what we've heard tonight, perhaps in Dr. Webb's closing remarks, is perhaps something we need to use as a take-home. He has said there are no universal human rights. So ask yourself tonight, as I'm approaching this conversation, is abortion right or wrong? Really, we've been talking about, can we kill innocent human beings in the womb? But there's a bigger debate on the table tonight, and that is, do any of us have rights? If there are no universal human rights, then what does that mean for all of us? I take issue with that. I argue that we have natural rights regardless of whether or not government wants to acknowledge them. Their role is to protect them, not to create them, and we have them by definition. What do you believe? Do you believe there are universal rights or not? Now, Dr. Webb said also that, again, in closing, trying to tie together some of these ideas, he said scientists disagree. Well, that may be true. Scientists can disagree about something, but that doesn't mean there's no truth. We used to have great disagreement upon the globe, the universe, the Earth. Was it flat or was it round? Did that mean there was no truth? No. We know today the Earth is not flat. There was truth in spite of disagreement. If disagreement meant there's no truth, that would mean there'd be no truth to questions like genocide or human slavery. There is disagreement upon these things, but I argue we can find a solution. There is right and wrong, and those who believe sex trafficking is moral are wrong. Those who believe it's right to kill innocent humans because of their age in the womb are wrong. I think it's fair to say that. I think if someone says it's okay to kill someone who is white because of their skin color, they're wrong. But what do you think? Now, Dr. Webb did ask, why do women choose abortion? He gave us a very good list. I think I referred to some of these in my opening remarks, but he gave us more, such as hunger, homelessness, and inadequate housing. These are real, difficult circumstances. And that's the complexity. The complexity lies in the unplanned pregnancy, not abortion. The complexity lies in all the surrounding circumstances. If we want real solutions for men and women today, we need to find real solutions to homelessness. But what you saw on the screen isn't it. When a woman has an abortion, she's not suddenly given a great new home to live in. This is not solving the real core problems many women today face, but it is killing women every day, and more women than men. That's why I refer to the preborn as she, because in countries like China and India, there are 120 boys born for every 100 girls. Girls are dying even more than men in the womb. So when he says neither side has truth, ask yourself, which side has given better evidence tonight to answer the question, what is the preborn? Are they human or are they not? I've given you embryology textbooks, citations from abortion advocates themselves, and also medical dictionaries. There are many more resources you can look at and ask, not is there disagreement, because it doesn't matter who says what. What matters is who has better evidence and who does not. So as we're closing tonight, if you look at this around this room, you would see humans with a lot of differences. Different skin color, hair color, eye color. You have to ask yourself, are we all equal in our personhood in spite of all of our differences? If so, our personhood must be grounded in something we share equally. But is there anything with all of our differences? Yes, there is one thing, your human nature. But when did you get that? When you began to exist. Why did you not become an adult cat? Because you didn't have a feline nature. You've had a human nature since you began to exist at fertilization. But this idea of stripping personhood from some humans who get in our way or have something we want, it's not new. I referenced before British common law. I referenced Virginia Supreme Court law. We could look at the Nazis excluding the Jews, 1936. The German Supreme Court said the court of the German Empire determined that Jews were not persons in the legal sense. Here in America, we once stripped personhood from Native Americans, like George Canfield notes in the American Law Review, or children when we wanted them to work in our factories. And today, we're stripping personhood from the youngest humans among us. Is that fair? There is only one way tonight to achieve veritable human equality, and that is the option on the table. Do you believe in universal human equality? One side has said there is no universal rights, no equality. The other side says there is. Which do you believe? The only way to truly have equality is to shake off the dusty prejudices of our past and be bold to acknowledge the prejudice of today, permitting the killing of 3,000 humans every day, our future, and to say that we are all finally, once and for all, created equal.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that lively debate. Plenty to think about. Now we're going to move to the question and answer phase for the evening. We're going to start, first we're going to do in-person questions from those of you who are here. We have 2 microphones. We'll do this for about 20 minutes. So I guess based on which side they're sitting on, questions for Mr. Drayer, you would come to the center mic, and questions for Mr. Webb for him would be on the far side. So we would invite you to do that. We'll do that for about 20 minutes. We're going to alternate back and forth. Each speaker will then be given 2 minutes to answer the question, and then the other speaker will be given 30 seconds opportunity to rebuttal. We ask that the questioners only ask questions. You're not here to debate these speakers or to make statements. We would just like questions directed to them. If you're going too long, we'll cut you off and move on. So we'll go ahead and start that. After that, those who are watching online, we will have 10 minutes worth of questions that you can tweet in. He gave you that address. At Purdue SFL, and was it hashtag abortion debate? Okay, hashtag Webb for questions for Professor Webb, and hashtag Drayer for questions for Mr. Drayer. And so we'll do that after that. So we would certainly invite you to come forward and begin. If we have a question for either speaker, we'll alternate back and forth.
The question is there justification for abortion in the first trimester, right? So if my position, if you agree with my position that all human beings are equal, then that would lead us to conclude that it is wrong to kill you regardless of your age. So whether you kill a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old, it's wrong either way. The same would be for those humans in the womb. Whether she is only 2 weeks old or 15 weeks old, it's equally wrong to kill her. So if the preborn is human, I rule that we must not kill them regardless of their age. Otherwise, we're committing ages of age-based discrimination. So that's why I oppose it. Again, we had one more piece of evidence since that was part of the question tonight. Patrick Lee and Princeton Professor Robert George, they have in the National Review Online that embryonic human beings are distinct, self-integrating organisms capable of directing their own maturation as members of the human species. That's for all humans, again, first trimester or third. So I would say that we ought to defend all humans, regardless of their age.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, opportunity to respond for 30 seconds.
I can say nothing more than I have already said, but I would like to read you one quotation in my gun. In the days after conception, fertilized human egg, the zygote, certainly has none of the features that give fully developed human life its value. Indeed, even a mouse has more conscious awareness than a Homo sapien at this point in its development. That's why the UK put into its HFE Act 1990 this statement: a human embryo cannot be thought of as a person or even as a potential person. It is simply a collection of cells which, unless the implant in the human uterine environment, has no potential for development.
Okay, can we move on to the next question?
For these cells protect safety.
Okay, can we move on to the next question?
Professor Webb, thank you for participating in tonight's debate. My question is, do you support the currently legal practice and the growing practice, the legal practice of women to abort their children for purposes of sex selection?
No, that's not a good reason. Within this culture, that gave us some data on what's happening in China. Might be within their framework a good reason, but not within them.
Any response?
My response would be that you see Dr. Webb himself even opposes some abortions because he knows it's wrong to kill humans because of their sex. So the question is, though, if Dr. Webb is correct and we don't really know when human life begins, how dare he tell a woman in America, you should not kill your preborn child because she is a male, or because he's a male because she's a female. He apparently is agreeing with me that the preborn life is a human life. Otherwise, he wouldn't oppose it. So I think we see again that even Dr. Webb agrees that preborn are humans. He's defended the right to kill them.
Okay, next question.
Hello, Mr. Drayer. I was just wondering, what is your moral stance on the use of abortion for medical purposes, for the preservation of the life of the mother, or for the embryo siblings involved?
I'm sorry, if there are too many embryos there, are you saying?
No. A specific example I heard once from a woman was that she had 4 babies, but one of them was dying in the womb and was threatening. The doctors told her it was threatening the other 3. Would it be morally acceptable in those circumstances for a abortion to be done in that case?
Well, let's take an issue of generally when the mother's life is at risk. What do we do? I think we should follow the ethic to the greatest moral good possible. That should be what motivates us. And so the same is true with the life-threatening circumstance of pregnancy, which does happen. That some women have. The most common example is ectopic pregnancies, where the embryo does not implant in the uterus like she should, but she implants elsewhere, such as in the fallopian tube. Maybe the procedure that you are referring to. In this case, we should do the greatest moral good possible. To stand by that 2 humans die is not a great good. So I think we should save someone. I think we probably agree on that. The question is, who can we save? Prior to viability, it is not possible to save the child. She's again in the fallopian tube. As she grows, she'll rupture the tube. She will die, and the mother will probably hemorrhage and die as well. So we can take the baby out of that harmful environment, but we have no incubator for her, none that can keep her alive in the first trimester or any second before viability. And so the unfortunate circumstance is she will die. When you separate mother and child, though, what you're doing is an action that leads to the foreseen death of the baby, but the baby's death is not the intended action. So you foresee it, but you do not intend it. For example, another illustration would be if this room's on fire, and I'm running out, hopefully I'll do some great good if I can, and take some of you with me. But I can't carry all of you. So I'm carrying some of you out of the flames. I may look backwards and see some of you perishing in the flames. I know you that you will die. I foresee your death. But compare that to me locking the doors and setting the room on fire. In both cases, I foresee your death, and only one do I actually intend it. So we save the mother's life, foreseeing the baby's death, but not intending it. And in that way, we save at least 1 human. But that is different than standard elective abortion, by which we not really foresee. But as you saw on the screen, we intend the death of the baby by decapitation, dismembering, disemboweling. So that would be an injustice. So I argue we should save the mother if possible, but we do it not through, we do it the ethic that we are trying to save as many humans as possible. And after viability, there's no such thing as an emergency abortion. Go to the hospital and have an emergency C-section and try to save both mother and child.
Okay, that's time. And a response?
I think the health of the woman is one of the most important considerations we give to this debate. And just keep saying, wants to permit abortions. Yeah, I want freedom of choice. That does not mean I want to have an abortion, or I want my wife or my husband to have an abortion. If we all choose not to, that's fine. But we should have the choice.
Thank you very much, Seth.
Okay, next question.
Professor and Seth, I'll just address both of you. I shouldn't say we. It is a fact that the grass is a certain color, the sky is a certain color. There are physical characteristics of items on this earth that we know to be true. Now, if a person is colorblind, they may not see those facts the way most of us do. But that colorblind person still knows that this is either that way or this way. So I can't comprehend, and maybe Professor, you can explain better to me how you can, and I'm relating this, my analogy goes back to moral relativism of sex trafficking, how you can call one thing right here and one thing wrong, and the same thing wrong over here. One other thing.
Yeah, let's just go with that.
Please.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question, to be honest.
I'm just simply asking for a clarification.
When say that morality, moral judgments are culture bound. That's all I've said. Not universal. They're not God-given, whatever in the world that would mean. You can be by our Creator. I don't know that can be defended. That is a point of view. Now, that does not mean that there isn't truth. You started your question that, of course, there's truth. It's just that human beings are not fully capable of ascertaining that truth. And there are different points of view about the truth of a given issue. We can't take them in the abstract and give us anything. I suggest one paper you might want to read is Why I Stopped Worrying About the Definition of Life and Why You Should Do It as Well. The project of finding life is either impossible or pointless. That's from the reputable philosopher, not embryologist.
Okay, so the question was, does truth exist? I think you suggested, for your explanation, you gave good demonstrations how we know truth exists. We all look at the green stuff on the ground and we say, someone might say, well, that's automobile. Someone says that's grass. There are two ideas there. Only one actually aligns with reality, and that is truth. Dr. Webb apparently agrees with us there is truth. What we're debating tonight is there truth to the question of when human life begins? We've both given you evidence. Which side has given you better evidence, do you think, to argue for when human life truly begins? Is it when we have a living organism in the womb that is of the same species as our parents? Or when it gains some quality-like consciousness? That's the question we have to ask, and how do we know that quality is really evaluated in the first place?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I just, say, should we worry about it less, Professor? Should we worry about it more? Maybe we can just all think about that as we leave here. Thanks.
Okay, let's go move on to the question over here.
Hi, Mr. Drayer. What is your view on affordable contraception, and how does that affect your stance on Planned Parenthood when that's the only place where women in poverty can receive such a tool?
Okay, so the question is, what do I think about affordable contraception? When it comes to contraception, we have to clarify a couple of things here because we use the word contraception without much precision sometimes. And there are truly contraceptive methods which mean they prevent fertilization from happening. A barrier method like a condom would be an example. When you prevent the sperm and egg from uniting, again, you're not harming any innocent human being. You just prevent those two cells from creating the new organism, the one-cell embryo. So any barrier method, tonight's argument is that it is wrong to directly and intentionally kill innocent humans. To prevent their creation has no bearing upon tonight's resolution, so I wouldn't oppose that. But there are other contraceptive methods, such as the Plan B pill, which not only could prevent fertilization, but could prevent a newly growing embryo from implanting in the mother's uterus. That is to say, to kill her, because she can't continue growing. She's already growing, and she can't continue to do that, and she is nearly passed out. So what happens is you kill her, and I oppose killing humans regardless of whether you do it medically or surgically. So when it comes to contraception, for tonight's debate, there are some contraceptives which do prevent fertilization, irrelevant for this conversation, but others that would involve killing innocent humans that I would oppose. When it comes to Planned Parenthood and making affordable contraception, though, truly barrier methods that have a bearing on this conversation, I am not opposed to those being in the public arena, but when it comes to Planned Parenthood, they also perform abortions and not only give out contraceptives that are barriers. So we're looking at an organization that not only gives you methods to prevent fertilization, but actually knowingly kills babies every day. Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in America, and if abortion is wrong, the other benefits they give us could not outweigh their crimes. If we had an organization that gave men great education, but also some things they did were helping men beat their wives, we find that immoral. So the organization itself cannot be seen as moral for other benefits they give us, because they are daily killing our children too.
Any response?
Question was affordable contraception. Absolutely. Absolutely. We can't be ostriches with our heads in the sand. Sex is alive as well. Part of the human condition. It's going to occur. 85% of the students on university campuses are engaged in sex, according to one survey. We want somehow to have responsible sex and better have responsible access. And I do want to argue with Seth when he says that Planned Parenthood provides abortion. Planned Parenthood has objectives far beyond that. And in fact, many of the agencies do not provide it. Perhaps offer some advice about it, but not provide it.
Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Professor Webb, I very much appreciated you at the end of your closing remarks bringing up women, the reasons women perform abortions. I really appreciated you just bringing that to our mind. And I was wondering, as someone who's, as you said, you're pro-choice, not pro-abortion, what would you call us to do for these women? What can we do to help?
Let's get busy on poverty. Let's get busy on the inadequacy of education for women around the world, not just at Purdue University. Let's talk about these issues as we are tonight. Let's heighten awareness, if you will, which might lead to attitude shifts. Those are the kinds of things that I want to do.
Response?
So I think Dr. response right there shows that the answer to the questions, these problems we're facing, is abortion. When I asked what is the solution, he didn't say more abortion. Why? Because we know that more abortion doesn't solve homelessness, it doesn't solve poverty, it doesn't solve all of these great societal difficulties we're facing. So what we saw on the screen, what we're talking about tonight, some say it's a solution, but even Dr. Webb admits it's not the solution we need. We need real answers for real problems, and killing our children isn't one of them. So Dr. Webb, when he says that human life may not be valued because she lacks the quality of consciousness, again, we have to ask him, why is that consciousness, why is that quality valued in the first place? Why does it matter?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next question.
Yes. Over the course of this evening, both you and Dr. Webb have touched a couple times on the issue of truth and how it applies to the resolution at hand. However, I don't recall hearing either of you in the course of your talks the definition of what truth is and how it is ascertained. Could you touch on that briefly?
Sure, that's an excellent question. How do we know what truth is? Very good question here. So, truth, I think we have to define as what lines up with reality. So you and I both may look at an apple, and I may say, well, that is a piece of fruit. You may say, well, it's automobile. Again, only one of our views actually aligns with reality. You may call an apple an automobile, but you can't get inside it and drive it to Bloomington if you wanted to. You cannot do that. It is not an automobile. Whereas when I say it's a fruit, that actually aligns with reality. Whether you call it fruit in this language or some other language, calling it a fruit is correct, whereas calling it automobile is not. So that is truth, what aligns with reality. So if we look at a fetus in the womb and I say, well, that is a human, and someone else says, well, no, that is a monkey, only one of our views actually aligns with reality again. Regardless of whether or not the fetus looks like a human, what matters is she a human? What is her genetic makeup? What is her parentage? Those same things that help us know, again, the green stuff on the ground is grass. That same scientific inquiry leads to declare that truthfully, the fetus in the womb is a human being. Dr. Webb's contention tonight is it's not a valuable human being because it lacks some value-giving property like consciousness. But we must ask him, how does he know consciousness gives us value in the first place? That's a relatively new thought. They used to think it was skin color. Other cultures that thought or think it's sex. We know that's wrong, though. Having a certain skin color doesn't make you a person. And same with consciousness. Having consciousness doesn't make you a person. He's merely describing a human in the womb. He's not telling us why that is the valuable human as opposed to humans who are not yet conscious. So truth is what aligns with reality. And truth is not what a certain embryologist says or a certain philosopher says. Look at the actual evidence yourself and ask, where does the evidence lead? And that is where you know what truth is, whether or not the fetus is a human being.
And the response?
I do not like Seth's wording. Truth is what actually is, actually exists, as though you could come at that independent of the individuals who are doing it and the language they are used to describe it. On that I agree with Seth. If we call those early stages of embryonic development a child, then comes a different assertion of truth than if you call it an embryo. So we've got to ascertain truth through the eyes of the person who's investigating.
Okay, this might be the last question we have for our audience here before we go online, so I believe it's your turn.
Professor Webb, you say choice is so highly valued. If so, can anyone make a wrong choice? And what would that be? What would that wrong choice be?
The outcome would be detrimental in some significant way. So the person chooses to step out in front of a car and hit by it and dies, whatever death is. That's seems to be a bad choice. Something that she or he should not have done. But I wish I had time to develop this idea of the part. There is a difference between more acceptable behavior that is of poor choice. I'll give you one quick off the top of the head. You won $1,000 in the lottery tonight. There are various ways you could spend that. And some of the ways that you could spend it are morally reprehensible, and others are not. Permissible, but not reprehensible. You chose to use your lottery winnings to gold plate your car. I wish you wouldn't. Wish you hadn't decided to do that, but your choice. But that does not make it morally reprehensible. Just because there is a different decision you could have made, and perhaps I wish you did. That's one of the things that's been implied here. That others should make the choices that I would accept. Why keep arguing about choice? Don't worry about what I would do, or I would argue with my wife about doing. That's not the important. Let's get the decision in the hands of the person.
Okay, so the question was, are some choices wrong? I think we see here the failure of the label pro-choice. It does not define the choice in question. We're talking about the choice to choose college majors, I'm pro-choice. The choice whether or not to go to a certain college, I'm pro-choice. What about killing toddlers for fun? I'm anti-choice. What about raping women? I'm anti-choice. What matters is, are we dealing with a preference or something that is immoral? Preferences like college majors and schools, we all should be pro-choice. Immoral things like sex trafficking, human slavery, I hope we're anti-choice. Abortion is a fault.
Okay, now would like to take some online questions if we have some. I'm not sure who's facilitating that. Here she comes. And we'll try to alternate these between speakers as well. Again, 2 minutes and then a 30-second response.
We actually don't have any questions so far for Seth, sorry. But Professor Webb, what would you say to someone who survived an actual abortion? Were they not a person and they survived?
Who is not a person? You mean if a woman attempted an abortion and whatever it was, the zygote or the embryo did not die? What would I say? I would say fortunate in my view, my scheme of things, that the abortion was unsuccessful. But now I'm simply reflecting a personal point of view. From her point of view, if she very, very much wanted and needed an abortion, and she tried it and it didn't work, then it was a failure. I put my arms around her and give her a hug. Maybe next time you choose a different alternative, but in any case, I'm sorry for you. I would not criticize her attempt. If that's what made sense to her then, under the circumstances, you've heard the old expression, don't criticize a person until you walk the mile in her moccasins. No man in this room knows what it is like to have an abortion, or would be like. The best you can do is get it through the eyes of a woman.
Do you have a response to that? Other speaker?
Yeah, my response would be that experience does not come before knowledge, and that's by definition. I am not a woman. That is true. But I can still tell you that it's wrong for women to drown their children in the bathtub. Because I know that it is objectively true that innocent human beings ought not to be killed. And so whether I'm a woman or a man has really no bearing upon this topic. What matters is, are innocent humans dying? Well, you saw tonight, did I give you enough evidence to prove that preborn are humans? If so, what about the visual evidence that showed you that they are dying daily? If that evidence stands, then pro-choice, abortion, whatever they would is killing innocent humans.
And
What about, I'm sorry, is it possible, there were a few more questions that were, and it's still here for me, could they still ask a question?
well, is there any other from the audience questions, so we could alternate the online with the in-person questions? Any for, okay.
I'll try to make it clear as possible, I apologize. So I feel like there's kind of like, we don't talk too much about culture, like the differences of culture. For example, somebody over there said something about how there are lots of facts, like the grass is green, which a lot of people see color very differently depending on the culture that you're from, depending on where you're from, or the fact that stopping the sperm and the egg from coming together is okay, or a lot of people think that's wrong, or killing like animals and eating them just because we can is right or wrong, and religion is right or wrong, all these different things. So, and all those things are not, like, none of them are, like, legally bound, right? A lot of those things are, like, perfectly legal. Well, I guess the question for you is, why focus on making abortion illegal instead of focusing on the issues of why abortion happened, especially while the numbers are lowering? So, like you said before, you said, like, this is a thing about abortion, it's a thing about, like, you know, there are all these other things like poverty and like the reason of all these, like, why abortions are happening. Why aren't we focusing on those things instead of abortions where there are reasons where you think abortion may be okay, like the life of the mother and stuff like that? I don't know.
A great question, yeah. So I think the question is, if we have root difficulties, why not focus upon those and reduce abortion by solving those greater problems? Excellent question. My response would be, if we agree that we should reduce abortion, we have to answer first, why are we reducing it? What is wrong with abortion? Why would we not want many abortions in America? answer that question, that will tell you how we proceed to reduce it. If we answer the question abortion is wrong because it's killing innocent humans, then education fighting poverty is not enough. If it's wrong because it's not an enjoyable experience for the mother, then maybe that's an okay track to take. But if abortion is wrong because it kills innocent humans, the root causes, dealing with those is not good enough. Because what if the topic tonight was spousal abuse? And I said, well, let's not criminalize spousal abuse. Let's deal with the root problems and educate men better so they don't feel the need to beat their wives. We find it to be inadequate. Because when you're harming innocent humans, education, fixing the root problems is not good enough. You also ban the action to safeguard, protect the innocent humans. So I agree with education, fighting poverty, all that I agree should be happening now, but alongside the more basic charge that we must protect innocent humans in our culture. So again, we're back to the same question. Is the preborn a human? All of this rides upon that. If they're not a human, abortion is morally permissible, and I don't know we should reduce it, because it's helping women, maybe. But if they are human beings, then what justification would justify killing them? Ask yourself, what would you rather use as a reason to justify killing a toddler? If there are none, why do we use those same reasons every day to kill that same child which is just younger in the womb? That's ageism. All I'm asking for is equal treatment between born and preborn. If you would kill a born human for that reason, don't kill a preborn woman for that reason.
Any response?
No, I think Seth's analysis is a good one. And the number of times he used the word human in his response, many. I didn't count them. But he's got his finger on the issue. What is a human? What is a human? Are we going to classify zygotes as humans or not? We don't for legal purposes. The questions were raised about legal issues, so we don't do that. Our Supreme Court, less than so, has ascertained that embryo is not a human beyond front of the trimester.
Okay, do we have another online question for Professor Webb?
Okay, Professor Webb, if we have no natural rights, what generates our presumption against killing us?
Are you talking, or is the questioner talking about why would most of us be inclined toward good deeds, doing the right thing is better? And my answer is we have to teach each other that, not innate. It's not a part of the human condition. We will do what is, quote, right, as we are taught what's right. And most of us have been taught that killing human beings is not right. Most of us have not been taught that killing zygotes is wrong.
Response?
Dr. Webb continues to draw a line between human beings and human life, which is a valuable human being. There is no question that at fertilization, a new human being comes into existence. The 1981 U.S. Senate Subcommittee reaches conclusion with their authorities. Embryologists told us this fact. We know that human life begins at fertilization. It asserts it's not a human valuable life. So what he is doing is drawing a distinction between human beings and human persons. A very dangerous line to take again. So if we are going to hold tonight, if some humans don't count, that's again nothing new. Other countries have done that.
Okay, do we have an online question for?
We actually got a couple online questions.
So this will probably be the last question then.
Okay, Mr. Drayer, what is your definition of life and death?
This is a good question that Dr. Webb brought up in his remarks earlier. Whenever you have, he brought up the question of, for example, take death first. Brain death is the current definition of death. The reason we use that as a definition is that it's true. You walk into a morgue, there's living tissue in there. We can keep bodies alive artificially. But in brain death, what happens is the ability of your body to work as a coordinating organism ceases. You do not function as a whole being. The cells are no longer talking to each other. Your body has died and you have living parts, but there's no living whole. And that's why we say brain death is the death of a human being. But think about fertilization. What happens at fertilization? As Dr. Maureen Condon again from the University of Utah has noted, the zygote acts as a complete whole from the beginning. She is directed her development as a whole being even before her brain is in place. The idea to be a coordinated organism is in place at the beginning. That's why Dr. Condon says that, and that's why many others like Patrick Lee and Robert George again say that we have a self-integrating organism at the beginning. That is the beginning of life. We have an organism working as a whole being. That is in existence at fertilization, and that ends at brain death. And that's how we should define life and death, if we want to use objective terms. Whenever you have an organism that is coordinated, that is a living being, and we have to ask ourselves, what kind of being is it? It's the same species as its parents, therefore Homo sapiens. So at fertilization, we have a life of a new human. At brain death, we have the death of a human being. Through all that phases in between, though, that human is the same human. She will look and act differently in all of her phases and have different capacities all the way through, but our capacities are irrelevant. Consciousness, he again asserts that is what gives you our value, but he's never told us why. He's asserted that's a value-giving property. We need more than just assertion. We need to ask Dr. Webb, why is that a value-giving property? How does he know that gives us our value? It's not enough to really assert it. He has to substantiate that claim and tell us why that bestows value upon us. My question is also equal. What is yours?
Okay, final response?
Yes, I didn't say that the human condition begins with consciousness. I said that's one way of approaching. And in the seminars that are conducted on this topic, there will be 14, 15 different characteristics of the human condition, any one of which you could adopt. I'd simply use consciousness as an example here. I don't know when human life or the human condition begins. Every criterion you can use is subject to debate. We don't know. And Seth claiming that it begins conception doesn't make it so. Saying something over and over and over again doesn't establish its truth.
Okay, well, that brings us to a close of our scheduled format. I see some other people might have some questions, and the speakers may be willing to stick around and answer those afterwards, I think. So let me turn it back over to Jonathan.
Well, thank you very much to both of our speakers. We really appreciate the effort and preparation you both went to participate in this event. So let's first give a round of applause to our speakers. Also, thank you very much to Mr. Bunning for moderating this debate. We really appreciate his services in that regard. I just have a few quick remarks to make before we're dismissed. First, please fill out the survey you have in your programs and leave that on the back table as you exit, or the box out there. Second, if you're interested in finding out more about Purdue Students for Life, you can check out our website at purduestudentsforlife.weebly.com. That's also in your program. I'd like to thank several organizations for their help in putting on this event. Specifically, the Leadership Institute and the Purdue SOGA Board helped us with the funding for this event, so our thanks to them. I'd also like to thank Created Equal for their help with the live streaming of this event so that our online viewers could participate. You can find out more about Created Equal by going to their website, createdequal.net. Also, in relation to Created Equal, if you go to their Facebook page, there is an online poll asking who you think won this debate. So if you'd like to give an opinion on that, go to their Facebook page and participate in that poll. That's all we have for this evening. If you have any questions about Students for Life or Created Equal, feel free to check out the tables at the exit. Thank you all for coming. We are dismissed.